someone asked me to do a talk on for college students and those about to enter college on some of what I've learned so you can make the most of your opportunities there because dating is more than just praying and more than just waiting for God to bring you the right person. It's also taking some actions and it's also being wise, and wisdom is from the Lord. So I hope that this might help. Here's a fact not a lot of guys know. Women like to know men a little bit before they say yes to a one-on-one date. Not all women, but this is true most of the time. What this means is a woman that might say no to you if you ask her out the first one or two times that she's met you is the same woman who might have said yes to you if she had just known you a few more days or maybe a couple months. So, what I often will say to guys is whenever you meet a woman that you're interested in, rather than walking across the room and asking for her number to go out to dinner, that you walk across the room and invite her and the people she's standing with to join you and some of your friends on a group event, on a group date. It's friendly, it's easy for her to say yes to, and it gives her a chance and you a chance to get to know each other better in a smaller group setting where you can really have a conversation. That's to me not only the easiest way to ask a woman out, but also the most effective. So now you're in that smaller conversation. It's all about conversation skills. Having a conversation is actually easier than you might think. It involves you giving short, clear answers and asking simple follow up questions. This is what I mean. If someone asks you a question like, what are your hobbies? A short, clear answer is, I like to play sports, especially basketball, or I like to go hiking and I've tried these trails. You gave an answer in a little bit of detail. It was short, it was clear, it was confident. You answered it more than just, I like to hike or I like sports. That's a bit too short. Makes it seem like you're shy or nervous or not opening up. So just make it a longer sentence and you're good. You're good. Um, and then a great way to ask her questions, is you start off with like something really basic, what everyone else is asking. What did you do over the summer? What are you looking forward to for the holidays? Are you in state or out of state? Really basic stuff. The secret is once she starts to talk, you ask her a follow up question, a question about what she just said. So if she says, I'm out of state, I'm from Chicago, you go, oh, Chicago, what's that like? What are some of your favorite things about Chicago? Because when you ask a follow up question, it kind of proves that you just listened to the first thing she said really well. And that already makes you stand apart in a crowd. So just ask a few follow up questions. And by that point, she probably will have asked you a question. You give a short, clear answer, and then, you just kind of go from there. And if you start to get to an awkward silence, you can always say, oh, this was really great talking with you. I hope to bump into you again soon. Something like that. The one trap I want to urge you to avoid in this is to get so nervous that you just kind of talk and talk and talk about a whole bunch of facts, or you talk too long. That's a trap some guys get into just because they're nervous. Keep the conversation mostly about her and don't talk too long, even if she's the one talking the most. Maybe cap it at about 10 minutes and then politely, talk to someone else for a while or go get a drink of water because you want to give her space. So at this point, I'm assuming that you've invited her and her friends to hang out with you and your friends on a few different occasions. And she said yes most of the time. That's a good sign. Other good signs are when you're talking to her, does she give you kind of personal information or does it stay polite? Like, oh, this is my major, and she's done talking. Or does she talk about, why she chose the major or what it reminds her of in her family? Like that would be personal information. Does she ask you just one or two very polite questions? Or does she really try to ask you some of the deeper questions? Um, Clearly, keeping it short and polite is a bad sign. Her asking you more is a good sign. Sometimes a woman who's shy might seem like she's not interested because she's kind of keeping it polite and brief, but it's just because she's shy. Or sometimes she seems really interested, but it's just because she's really friendly. I understand, guys, it's really, really tough. Um, So you have two approaches for being direct. One is to really just say, hey, I'd love to invite you on a date sometime. Do you want to do dinner? That's pretty direct. If you take that approach, I highly recommend you don't specify a time like Saturday at 8 or this Saturday. Don't specify a time at all. Just say, I'd like to take you to dinner sometime. Does that sound like something you would enjoy? Because if you didn't give a date and a time, then she can't say, oh, I'm busy. Because there's a lot of women who will say, I'm busy, and they literally just mean, I'm busy, and they're actually hoping you'll ask them again. But that's way too confusing to figure out, right? Because maybe they're the women that will get mad at you if you ask them again. How are you to know? Avoid that to begin with by not putting a date and a time. Because if you leave it really vague, like, would you like to go on a date to dinner sometime? And it's really vague, then she's either going to say, yeah, I'd love that sometime. I'm busy this weekend, but I'd love that sometime. Or she's going to give you the, I'm kind of just in a very busy phase of my life right now. This is just a very busy semester for me. If she's that busy, that's typically a bad sign. And so if you're going to be direct, at least don't put a time on it or a date. Um, and if you want to be a little bit indirect, just a couple times longer before taking that risk and asking her out specifically, I would recommend as you invite her to these group events, you make it smaller and smaller. So it's no longer a group of 10 of you doing board games, it's just a group of 4 of you. And maybe you even ask her out to coffee, and maybe it's just as friends. But if she keeps accepting your invitation to smaller and smaller events where it's just kind of just you and her or just you and a couple people, that's probably a really great time to say, at the end of the coffee, I'd really like to take you on a date to dinner sometime. Go ahead and say date. At that point, go ahead and make it clear. Women do like a man to make it clear when the time comes. So be encouraged. It can be as simple as that. And if you get a no, if you try all of these approaches and it seems like she likes you and you get a no, that's better than letting it drag on. There are some women who really don't understand that hanging out with a man one on one is leading him on. There are actually a lot of women who say to me, we would go hiking together and to the movies and out to dinner. And then one day he asked me if I liked him. And I was like, oh my gosh, did I lead him on? Do you think I let him on? And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, I think you let him on. There's a lot of women that you can invite them out all the time one on one and they can say yes and they just think you're friends. So at some point you need to be direct so that you either start actually dating them or those kinds of women tell you no so you don't go miss the great women that do love you just because those women haven't figured out the difference between dating and friendship yet. So be encouraged. I hope these tips will guide you through some of that. So now let's talk about sex. Now you're dating and you really like her, so I think we better talk about sex and whether or not God wanting sex to be after marriage is really God wanting what's best for you and her, for people in general. And then how do we keep to those goals and standards if we do think that's what God wants and we do want to do that? I actually have a really simple tip that comes right after this slide. You will miss so many more red flags about someone you're dating if you go too fast physically. You really don't want to waste a year or a semester or a lifetime having ended up with the wrong woman because we're really here for studying in college and going deeper in your faith in the Lord. Then there's the issue of your health. I'm serious about this. Sexually transmitted diseases are way more rampant than people think. And even if it's not hurting you, it could end up hurting someone you love. I know a woman who developed cancer and needed surgery due to a sexually transmitted disease she caught from her husband that he didn't realize he had from a girl he had dated prior to dating her and getting engaged. Um, Luckily, she was still able to have children afterwards because they caught it soon enough. But you do not want to hurt the people you love or anyone by these risks. Birth control, contraceptives, you can both be doing everything you can be possibly doing. And babies will happen at some point and more than you realize. I'm a married woman. I talk to a lot of married women. I can be in a group of 10 married women. And two of them will talk about the surprise baby they weren't expecting, and they were using birth control, one or two methods, and they still got pregnant, and none of us in the group are surprised because it's common. So, what's the solution? How can you keep to your goal of sex after marriage? It is easier than you think. And it's exactly what me and my husband did. Date outside or in groups or at least in public. You can have a ton of time alone. You can have a ton of romance. You can even make sure the attraction's real without it being behind closed doors, without it being her apartment or your apartment. There's a lot that you can do. And I know this for a fact. I dated my husband all the way through to engagement and even marriage. And I think we were alone maybe twice, fully alone only twice. We were able to learn everything we needed to about each other, to fall in love, to plan a wedding, because there are so many fun things you can do while you're getting to know someone. Have a ton of fun. So that's it. I hope it was helpful. God bless.